If a lot of these businesses that we lend to, these are proven businesses, they're not startups, they want to get debt funding to grow, by not providing them the adequate funding, they just don't have the chance to become the corporates of the future. So you end up in this world where you're just dominated by the existing large businesses and they just get multi-brand and they just dominate every part of your life. And actually, I think that's a pretty miserable life.
Pleo is a leading European business spending platform. Pleo helps companies say goodbye to expense reports, chasing receipts or reimbursements by providing them with smart company cards that can control and track all their spending in real time. You can say goodbye to losing receipts, track and integrate with everything. If that sounds too good to be true, why not try them out for yourself and get your next team lunch on Pleo? Head to www.pleo.io/leaders and book a demo after this episode to see why we're such fans. I want to take a quick moment to recommend a podcast I love, and I know you will too. The Exponential View is the #1 technology podcast that goes behind the headlines to explore how and why our lives are being turned upside down by technology. Host Azim Azhar is a good friend and a fellow Secret Leaders listener, so you know you're in good hands. He's amazing at bringing clarity to some complex issues. Whether it's the looming battle between big tech and politics with Tony Blair, or understanding the lessons from history with Yuval Harari of Sapiens, or how to push innovation from the guy who convinced Google to get into AI, the Exponential View is the place where the future makes sense. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Check it out after the show. Rishi Khosla is something like a phenomenon, to quote LL Cool J, in the world of entrepreneurship. He has an impeccably good reputation, a track record of home runs to make Babe Ruth question his consistency, and yet he somehow also managed to keep a relatively low profile in amongst a backdrop of a remarkable career to date, which we would assume is more by design than accident. Is that right, Rishi?
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, okay. So, we've dragged him into the podcast studio today against his will, but, he's got a smile on his face. So, today's secret leader is the co-founder of Europe's highest valued FinTech company, having raised over $1 billion in funding to date in only 4 years. He's one of the stars of the industry, building up OakNorth to become one of the next generation companies to come out of London. But this is just his most recent headline. Rishi is a man who knows what he wants and has no time to waste in achieving it. He's the father of 4 kids, has been with his wife since he was 16, by which point he'd already completed his computer science GCSE at 11, his A-levels at 13, and he'd already received a master's from LSE by the time he was 20. And what have you done with your lives, listeners? Indeed. Me too. Anyway, he's an angel investor and 2-time founder. His first business, CoPal, he started with his good friend Joel Perlman, who somehow managed to match Rishi for intelligence and grit, having joined him as co-founder again in OakNorth. So, we've got a lot to cover, not too much time. Rishi, we'll start with the basics, start you off with some quick fire questions. Ready for them?
Let's go for it.
Japanese or Indian food?
Japanese for lunch, Indian for dinner.
Oh, mate, it's just not a man that likes to make decisions clearly, despite all the reputation.
Make full decisions.
ABN AMRO or GE Capital?
GE Capital.
Football or cricket?
Neither.
Oh, okay. Chill out, mate. Have some fun. Fiction or non-fiction books?
Absolutely non-fiction.
Most used app right now?
Mail.
Yeah, fair.
WhatsApp.
Not surprising. Calendar. Exactly. Yeah. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Deserted on an island, you can take 3 things, and we know you've got 4 kids, so someone's getting upset.
My kids are 1 unit.
Yeah.
So my wife, my kids.
What have you got left?
Humour.
Oh, you're gonna pack your humour, are you?
There you go.
I hope you've got a bag big enough, mate. Right, let's kick off. So, early years. Before you were 26 and you started your first company, you probably had a lot of life experience to help shape you. So, where did you grow up?
I grew up predominantly in England, but I did spend a few of my formative years in India as well.
Okay, take us through some formative years then. Like, you've done a lot of things. You've got the classic Indian vibe of, look, I completed all the education that you English people have actually managed to complete by the time you're 30, but I'd done it by 16. So you're already a walking stereotype where that is concerned. Well, take us
I'm
through
not commenting on that.
Yeah, take us through your Indian upbringing then. Pushy parents?
No, I mean, look, I
not
think...
unpushy parents.
No, I had dedicated and committed parents. So my father used to basically work 2 jobs, and I used to see him working until midnight, 1 a.m. every morning and be out of the house again at 7 a.m. And that just sort of infects you in a particular way where you start developing your own hunger, I guess, right? And my parents were always very aspirational in terms of their approach to life. And again, that aspirational approach is rubbed off. Unfortunately, I just got a very large dose of it.
Yeah, and take me through GCSE at 11. Were you not like, am I a midget? What's going on? Did your parents just lie to you about your age?
Look, I like playing with computers, right? And I like to be different. I like to do the things which I enjoyed. And I figured instead of just playing with computers, you may as well get a leg up. And that's why I decided to go ahead and start studying at the age of 10 for my GCSE. And I did it at 11, as you said.
Yeah. How's that stuff rubbed off with you now you're a parent? So you've got 4 kids. What are the ages?
They range from 6 to 14.
Oh, right. So they're all at Cambridge. They've just graduated.
And unfortunately, I'm trying to push them that way, but, it's just not working out at the moment. And clearly, I'm not executing as much as I should do.
Yeah, exactly. You need to speak to your father, get some tips, see actually what worked. Okay, so you went on to work at ABM AMRO before moving to GE Capital,
yep.
And you were given the chance to pitch directly to Jack Welch, I've read and heard.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
Sure. So
I guess context, just in case anyone doesn't know who Jack Welch is.
Sure. So context is Jack Welch was the guy who is credited with building GE into what I would say the highly successful company that it was before the last, call it 5 or 6 years. I joined the central strategy acquisition group in Europe, which is like the corporate function in Europe. And I was the youngest person there. I was like probably 23 when I joined. And so everyone else was effectively sort of managing director type level. And the firm, i.e. GE, had made a very clear sort of pitch to say that we're behind on e-business. We need to get ahead. And therefore, we need to be doing things differently. Jack Welch was doing his annual sort of trip around Europe and meeting all the businesses, etc. And we came up with the idea of pitching an early stage venture fund, which GE would actually take stakes in tech companies and then have GE businesses join the boards, and through that sort of get some infection in terms of what's happening in that world. So I pitched that with a colleague of mine to Jack, and his words were, take 25 million, go and spend it. Don't ask anyone. Come and see me once you've spent it.
Fair play. I mean, that's the kind of answer you definitely want. But 25 million is a drop in the ocean as well to someone like GE as well. So, what did you decide to spend it on?
So we invested in tech businesses in the US, in Europe, and in Asia, which is quite ironic given that we were based out of London, and obviously GE had a large private equity business in all of those regions. And look, some of those investments obviously did extremely well, and as with venture, a couple of them didn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, if most of them did well and a couple of them didn't, that's not really mostly with venture, is it? It's usually the other way around. But so let's just say that you've done a good track record as a starting point. So that was your first proper area of responsibility then?
Yep.
And what did that feel like at that age? Can you remember?
I mean, as most of my career
has. How old were you?
14. 23.
Okay.
Drinking out of fire hydrant, as I always put it, right? So you've got so much coming at you, you can't absorb it all. But it's a hell of a ride.
Yeah, and did you get an opportunity to sort of follow up with Jack Welch and tell him, how well you've done, and I say tell him how well you've done. I mean, like there's the area of recognition.
How can I put it? I guess I've always been sprinting through life. Recognition hasn't been what I focused on. I focused on results.
Yeah, fair enough. So you don't have any sort of yearning for peer... recognition is the perfect description for it. There's never been that sort of opportunity or moment of reflection.
I mean, no.
Yeah,
no.
Fair.
No.
And you had your next boss as well, right? So you helped establish a family office of the steel magnate Lakshmi Mittal.
Yes. That's right.
What was that like?
That was incredibly fun again, right? Totally different from GE. GE, you've got a large corporate structure. You've got all the mechanisms and support functions that you'd expect in a large corporate. Working with a highly successful entrepreneur and in helping establish the family office type environment, etc., is just totally the other end of the scale in terms of structure, organization, etc., but immense fun. I mean, I was spending a week a month in the Bay Area, a week a month in India. So literally sort of like hopping between sort of continents. And I was investing predominantly in both the Bay Area and in India. And just absolutely incredible experience and learning, because obviously that was also through 99, 2000 2001. So you saw the boom and you saw the come down from the boom, i.e. the bust. So just incredible learning, and obviously invested in some phenomenal companies behind some phenomenal entrepreneurs. Obviously Peter Thiel, Elon Musk at PayPal, and then a company called India Bulls in India, and a few others. Yeah, amazing experience.
So how old were you when you were meeting, and how old were Peter Thiel and Elon Musk when you were meeting them?
I can't remember how old they were. They must have been late 20s, I would imagine. And how old was I? I was 24.
Yeah, so like around the same age, right?
Yeah.
And what were they like when you met them? You know, at the time, building something new, right? So
Totally.
not the big reputation now of a career of successes. So what was it kind of like?
I mean, look, they were clearly very strong entrepreneurs. That's why I decided to put money behind them, right? But clearly they've gone on to prove that they're worthy of, very large things, clearly. I mean, PayPal was clearly just the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you remember like who you sort of vibed with more? Was it more Peter Thiel? Was it more Elon Musk?
I mean, the investment we actually ended up making was in X.com, which was Elon Musk's business, which actually got put together with Peter's business.
Okay, so I guess you had more of a vibe with him.
Well, that's just where we ended up going in.
Understood. Have you been able to stay in touch with either of them, or just?
I am not in touch with either of them.
No?
Today. No.
Okay, fair enough. Do you think you'd learn a lot from the way that they behave and act as such different kinds of entrepreneurs now?
Look, I think you can learn from anyone almost, right? And clearly the experiences that they've had, you can absolutely learn from that. And like you say, totally different entrepreneurs today.
Yeah. Fair enough. And any sort of, it seemed like the type of man to have regrets, but I'll let that come out of your mouth. Any sort of regrets or reflections on opportunities to invest in their future ventures? Obviously, they've gone on to some incredible things.
I look forward in life.
Very fair. It has a healthy response. Okay, so what about India Bulls? So did you have to? What was that kind of experience? That's obviously a massive company as well.
So massive company. I seed funded them when literally there were three of them in the basement of their house. So that was incredibly early stage. Again, phenomenal. I mean, very strong entrepreneurs. Obviously some recent haircuts for them, but I mean, had nearly 2 decades of just phenomenal growth. So very close to both stories. And again, seeing those businesses being built, again, drove a lot of my hunger in terms of what is possible, right? Because when you see companies like PayPal, et cetera, sort of scaling, et cetera, and you're close to those, you just say to yourself, wow, I mean, like, anything's sort of possible, right? Yeah. They created very strong reference points for me, I guess, in my life.
And just trying to understand or make sense of the opportunity that you really had. What budget did you have? What kind of directive? What kind of freedom? How much control did Martell have on it? How does take us through a very brief history of that particular family office operation? Because you always, I guess, venture capital. There's only a few different ways they run. Everyone kind of gets a vibe. Family office. I mean, that really doesn't mean anything in the sense of everyone chooses to run theirs differently. So how was yours run?
I mean, look, generally it was a memo through to Mr. Mittal and his son, Aditya Mittal, and then a phone conversation. So it was a relatively quick, informal process, and decisions obviously made within whatever, same day, next day, etc. But I guess a lot of reliance on my recommendation.
And was there a budget, or was it just like go find companies and if we feel like it, we'll feel like it?
No real budget.
Amazing. That's pretty cool. Do you actually realize how awesome that was? Like on reflection, it's rare, right?
Look, I've been blessed.
Yeah, okay, fair. Let's talk about Joel. My co-founder's also called Joel. We're going to focus on yours.
I'll call mine Joel then.
Yeah, perfect. It sounds a bit like a character in Superman if you say that. So how did you guys meet?
So we met at the LSE. We both did our Masters in Accounting and Finance together in 96, 97. And that's where we know each other from. And I guess 96.
What actually attracted you to each other from a business point of view?
We were very good friends through the LSE. Joel went out and then joined McKinsey and then started a firm based out in Miami for Latin America, etc. And he was coming to a point where he'd sold that business at the same time that I started thinking about what's next, sort of my own desire to be an entrepreneur and build an operating business. So we'd always stayed in touch. I'd actually invested in his firm as well. So we'd always...
With your own money or with Mattel's?
With Mattel's money. Yeah. So we'd always sort of built and maintained the relationship. And therefore, for us, it was natural to at least have the conversation around what is next and whether there's sort of a common path for us.
Were you nervous about, the potential pitfalls of running a business with a good friend?
No, didn't think about it even twice.
Really? And did you have any sort of ideas? If it wasn't Joel, do you have any ideas of like who else you might be starting the business with? Did you have like a list, or was it just like, no, I just think it would be Joel?
No, I'm generally a plan A type guy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting that vibe. Who pitched who? What was the idea?
I mean, look, we both had the conversation with each other, and Joel came down to London, and he said, look, I'll spend a couple of weeks and let's see where this goes. We spent a couple of weeks together, and we sort of said, there's something here. We got our first client, and we said, what do we do now? I guess we're going to start this business.
What was that business? So talk to us about CoPal. What's the insight? What's the opportunity?
So the business was fundamentally around how do you look at the research function or the type of analytics which are done at large financial institutions. And I'd been through that clearly at ABN AMRO, et cetera, but a lot of my friends had sort of been to many of the other large banks. And you sort of say, for the work you do and the output you produce, there has to be a better way to get to that output, right? In terms of both quality, consistency, cost, et cetera. So our whole hypothesis was that if we set teams up in India, we could probably build a much more robust process of doing a lot of that analytical financial work for financial institutions better, faster, cheaper, right? So that was the whole concept, and obviously
you were right.
Time proved out that we were right.
This podcast is brought to you by Klaviyo, the growth marketing platform most recommended by other business leaders, and last year 67 new brands switched to Klaviyo every single day. From a shopper's first impression to each subsequent purchase, Klaviyo understands every interaction, empowering brands to create more personalized marketing moments. When you have a 360-degree view of your customer, the growth possibilities are endless. Klaviyo truly understands how challenging it is for each and every entrepreneur to get their business off the ground. The cost of acquiring new customers is continuing to rise. Brands are experiencing diminishing returns as well as a small audience reach. Their marketing efforts are continually being squeezed. But Klaviyo is helping brands take back control by leveraging their own marketing channels like email, web, and mobile to provide exceptional customer experiences. Klaviyo continues to help hundreds of thousands of business leaders just like me grow globally. Visit klaviyo.com/leaders, that's KLAVIYO.com/leaders today to find out more. Now back to the show. Take us through that journey. What's the snapshot of CoPal? You know, when did you start it? When did you finish it? How did you exit it? Were there literally any bad moments? I know you don't look back, but I'm going to try and access this thing you might have called memory. See if we can get anything from you.
Started 2002, exited 2014. Started with obviously just Joel and myself, and we used a total of £40,000, $60,000 to build the whole business. So that was the total amount of capital which we used. Built it up to a 3,000 employee organization when we sold it to Moody's in 2014. You look at end of 2002 is when we started. So 2003, 2004, 2005. 2005 is the first time we even got to a revenue amount more than what I was used to taking as compensation salary back in 2001, right? So we went dry, as I call it, for multiple years. So almost like living off vapor. So my wife was servicing our mortgage on our apartment. Joel and his fiance lived in my apartment, my 2-bedroom apartment with us. So we were literally working all day, working all night, 1 or 2 days a week. We wouldn't sleep because we'd sort of be pitching during the day with clients, and we'd be doing the analytics work ourselves because we couldn't afford to set up an operation in India. Et cetera, et cetera. And then we then started hiring interns to do the work with us. And then when we got to a certain level of scale, then we said, let's send the interns to India and actually switch India on. And that's how we built it. So we built it brick by brick with, sweating blood, as I put it, the really hard way. But the discipline that gives you in terms of getting all the fundamentals right, making sure the culture's right, etc., is just amazing. So that was how we built it. And obviously, it was an experience that we had building that business, which then informed or planted the seed of the idea for OakNorth, which was trying to go and get an overdraft facility from one of the large commercial banks here in the UK, being politely told where to go, and then going into another commercial bank and being politely told where to go again. And
but was this when was this? Was
2005, so it was pre-crisis.
Yeah,
right.
Okay, sure.
So this was 2005 was like heydays, right? It's sort of like things were booming. And a few months later, we went to one of our clients, the special situations, i.e. prop desk of Citi Bank, and they spent the time to analyze the business, and they figured out that actually the business had creditworthiness, and did a $10 million dividend recap for us. So where we couldn't get a few $100K from commercial banks, we could get 10 million from an institutional player. And we said to ourselves, something's broken here. And as I said, that was very early on.
You're like, something's broken here. In about 7 years, we'll pick up this Post-it.
Well, 9 years, right?
9 years. Oh, yeah, fair.
So, and guess what? No one had solved the problem.
Yeah,
so,
that's amazing, isn't it?
That's when we started thinking about it.
That's super interesting. Did you find that distracting? As in, like, you're obviously like a creative problem solver. And it sounds like you both are to an extent, right? So was it distracting to be like, oh God, like we're running this business, we're really passionate about it, we've sweat blood to make it work, but oh God, that acorn of an idea is sitting there in my mind, and fucking hell, if someone else fixes that, that's going to be gutting.
No,
just patient.
we're just very focused. You have to focus on what you're executing on at that point in time. You need to have full conviction behind it. And look, we had absolute conviction that was a great business, and the research business was. I mean, that's why we ended up building it like we did. If you got sort of 1 foot out, focused on something else, I just don't think. I mean, when you're building a business, I think you need all your six senses on sort of in full focus. As soon as you don't have that, you've just got diluted effort. Diluted effort produces diluted results.
And did you have other great ideas like during that time? Did you just keep a list, or was this like the one that sort of came to you?
I mean, actually, on the contrary, what we did is when we were coming to sell the business, we started thinking about, okay, what is the business we want to go into? And we literally just took white sheets of paper. We'd sit down, we'd sort of brainstorm. This was always on the list. There were lots of other businesses we looked at, but nothing that we had, I guess, equal conviction over. But we didn't want to, how can I put it? We wanted to make sure that we had thought wide around the problem rather than just jumped into the thing that was informed by a personal experience. So no, we looked at lots of different opportunities.
Okay, so you've sold your business. Any earnout? Did you have to sit around? Did you just say goodbye day one?
So technically we sold the business in 2 tranches. So we sold a share initially in 2011, and then the balance there was a put call structure. So there wasn't a traditional earnout structure because I don't like earnouts, because in my view is 100% of earnouts get renegotiated, typically not in your favor, by the way, as management. So therefore,
hope everyone's listening.
We were advised pretty well. A very smart lawyer in New York, which was actually Joel's childhood friend, sort of advised us against earnouts, and we set up a phenomenal structure for the sale. So post financial exit, we spent 3-4 months doing a transition, and that was it.
Take a holiday?
A weekend, yeah.
Yeah, just a weekend? Your wife's like, God, no more. That'd be ridiculous. I haven't seen you for 15 years. I don't want to spend 3 days with you. Okay, fair enough. Did you or Joel actually do anything extravagant? You had this opportunity, this space. Anything like exciting? Any sort of, crazy purchases? A yacht, a Maserati, a new fountain pen?
Pass.
Fair, nothing, just focus. Right, next up then. So we started OakNorth. How long was the ideation process? So from founding the company's house day one, on to where? Take us through the first year of that journey.
Sure. So the idea, end 2013, beginning 2014, formed the company around that time period. And that's when we started sort of thinking about, okay, how can the tech work, etc. We also started thinking about actually proving ourselves in one market, i.e. the UK market, where we decided to set up the bank and actually build our own lending business. So probably first meetings with Bank of England early 2014 as well. And that went into obviously putting the application in end of July, beginning of August 2014, for the banking license and launching the business in September 15.
Right, okay. And the desire to do it in England, is that just because you'd been based here? Do you look around globally and think where interesting opportunities were, or was it just always going to be here?
So it was always very clear that we wanted that we believed that we could build a tech platform to address this, what we call the missing middle. And I guess I should explain where OakNorth sort of plays.
Please.
Right. So it focuses on companies which are in growth mode, but which are somewhat proven. So where you're looking to borrow, call it from $1 million to 25, 30 million, that type of gap, where typically as a growth company in that segment, if you go to a commercial bank, they'll still treat you like a retail customer. Whereas we would argue that a lot of those companies sort of feel like they're closer to a corporate or institutional customer, or at least that's where they want to get to. So these are companies which have turnovers from anywhere from 1 to 100 million, right? So within
often the money goes on marketing and stuff anyway, which seems like a stupid thing to do.
It could
for
go on
equity.
marketing, or it could actually just go on capital expenditures. It could go on investing. So obviously, if you look in the UK, one of the consumer-facing brands that obviously we provided debt funding to relatively early on was Leon, right? So take a Leon and they want to expand whatever X number of additional units. That's the type of funding that we would do. And we've done that for hundreds of British companies now, which has led to the creation of about 12,000 new jobs in the UK and about 13,000 new homes. That's a segment, as I said, sort of what we call the missing middle. And within that, we've always said that gap exists almost in every market, in every major market, right? And our decision was that we would want to address the problem globally using the technology platform, but we did feel it was necessary to take one market and build our own lending business to prove that actually the opportunity exists. Our platform does what we think it can do, et cetera, et cetera. And why did we choose the UK for that? Because it was the market which we knew extremely well, and we just so happened to live here, so it's just convenient.
And in 2015, being realistic, London FinTech capital of the world, not saying it's not now, but obviously it's considerably more complicated with Brexit to consider at the time. I mean, if you're going to start a FinTech company anywhere, it'd be London, I guess.
And look, I would actually say that's still true today,
yeah.
Right? I would say that London has such a phenomenal set of attributes, i.e. talent, open regulator, funding availability, all within close proximity of each other, right? And that's a pretty unique combination. So even today, I'd still view London as the capital for FinTech.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And also, regardless of whether I think it's fair, you're the one in the industry. I'm going to take your recommendation over my hunch. I don't know jack shit by comparison. Hey guys, I want to tell you about LaFosse Associates. Not only do I and many of our secret leaders use them for hiring tech talent, but they have an amazing new academy teaching people how to code for free, and then they help place them in tech companies too. In short, they are exactly the type of company you want to work with when searching for talent. That's www.lafosse.com. Right, Rishi, you talk about availability of capital in London, etc., 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 but of course your biggest investor is Japanese from the Silicon Valley. So let's talk about that discrepancy for a second.
Sure.
So you took $1 billion, correct?
Well, $1 billion is the total amount we've raised.
Yep. Oh, I see. Okay.
From our Japanese friends, we raised about 400 million of that.
Right. Okay. And how did you get to meet SoftBank? Is it, I hear very famous stories about meeting, Son, and I'd love to hear your experience. Did you get to meet the man?
Meeting Son?
Yeah.
I mean, I've met him multiple times.
Yeah. What's it like? I mean, he's unbelievable. His story is just so incredible.
He's a visionary, right? I mean, he thinks bigger almost than anyone that I've ever met. He thinks longer term than anyone that I ever met, and he's clearly willing to put his money where his mouth is. So inspirational character.
Did you find meeting him completely different? The attitude when you're pitching for the vision, do you find it a completely different kind of conversation to a lot of the other types of money that you were getting, where arguably you probably had to justify a lot of things considerably more? In everything I've read about Sun, a lot of the pitches seem like they really are relating to the size of your vision and what you can do and contribute to the world with it, as opposed to having to go through all the details.
So you're absolutely right. The interaction with Son was very much macro, big picture, about the opportunity, the TAM, the size of the market, the unit economics in terms of how you'll actually make it work, and fundamentally about his view of you as an entrepreneur, right? So absolutely, he focuses on the big metrics. But let's be clear, the team that he's built, which obviously Rajiv Misra runs in the Vision Fund, is a highly technical and diligent team. They do a proper drains up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's expecting to get, was it 450 million?
400 from 400 million from
Yeah,
them.
400 from someone that doesn't do their due diligence. But I read somewhere, and actually you can clarify this for me, but I did read somewhere about your rate of returns of people actually paying their loans back. It's a crazy statistic, no? As in your success rate.
As in we haven't, exactly. So we, in terms of actually losing money, we haven't lost any money.
Yeah.
And when you're lending, generally you lose some money. So I think from that perspective, it somewhat goes to the fact that the credit process that we go through to actually decide who to lend to, and then the way we actually manage our loans thereafter lead to good outcomes.
And that's all done algorithmically?
Well, it's all done using person and machine, right? Because our view is we don't believe you can write a 10, 15 million, 20 million loan purely based on our algorithm. But we believe that actually using big data sets, using a certain amount of machine learning, using sort of data structures, etc., you can put that together to formulate a much deeper analysis than you otherwise would on a deal like that. So the type of analysis you would do if you were doing a $500 million loan, and actually therefore end up making a better decision and still being highly efficient in doing so.
And what is the process then? I mean, is it something like, you do all the hard figuring stuff out, in the case of Leon, let's say. You have all the figuring out of whether it's a sensible investment, whether their plans to use the money actually stack up, locations, all the different things. And then you decide you're maybe going to meet the CEO and see if he's actually got like the right kind of charisma or character or attitude. Like, is that the in-person thing, or is it less so that?
No, more or less. I mean, again, when we talk about our UK lending business, obviously when we're licensing our platform out to other banks, we're fundamentally providing the credit analytics for them to actually underwrite themselves and to monitor themselves. And therefore, we're very much just around the analytics. But in our own business here, in our own lending business, we run all the analytics. Then we actually have the clients typically attend credit committee. And therefore, you do exactly what you just said. You meet the CEO, you meet the founder, etc., and fundamentally you get your questions answered and you formulate a view also on the people that you're providing debt financing to.
Fair enough. And you're making sure that if they're going on holiday, it's definitely never longer than 2 days either.
There you go.
Don't want them taking the piss. Right. So take us through the headline numbers.
Just to be clear, I always say I'm always on holiday. So my life's a holiday.
Well,
okay?
no, okay.
So just to clarify that point.
All right. Well, let's ask a different question then before I ask this one. Like, when was the last time you actually went away with the family?
Look, I go away with my family all the time.
Right, okay.
Right? So my life is my work and my family, right? So I go away with my family all the time, but I'm working all the time, but my work is fun. So for me, I'm always on holiday.
I get it. I completely agree. I say the same thing, and so do most of the guests, so I completely get it. But what's your idea of a nightmare holiday? What, like being by a beach? Like, is there like a boredom? Do you like city holidays, skiing, activities, or like sitting and relaxing?
To be honest,
whatever you're told to do.
No, I mean, look, I drive a lot, right? As in, I drive a lot of the decisions. But I mean, everything, all of the above.
Yeah. Okay. So variety.
Yep.
Okay. Coming back to the previous question, so you're a clearly numerate gentleman. So take us through the headline numbers of SoftBank. So, sorry, not SoftBank. Well, actually, you can do that as well if you want, but it's probably not your information to share. What's Son's bank code? No, take us through OakNorth's headline numbers, where you're at today.
So if I look at total assets on the platform, we're in excess of 10 billion, and that's broken up by about $10 billion. So if I give you an exact number, it's probably like $12 billion of total assets on the platform. $4 billion are actually our own assets, i.e. our loan book in the UK is circa $4 billion today. And the balance, $8 billion, is third party, i.e. where we're licensing our platform to other banks. And therefore, we sort of have assets on the platform through them. The business has been profitable since, 9 months months after inception, or launch, I should say. We hit cash flow profitability, paid back all accrued losses 24 months thereafter. Yeah.
Because it's a rare thing in the fintech scene to be a profitable unicorn, so to speak, which sound like two mythical characters in one, a prophet and a unicorn. I actually haven't heard of one. Are you familiar there are any others in the space that can claim that?
I think if you look at all unicorns, not just fintech, there are, I think it's something like 5% or something,
right,
which are profitable.
Yeah. Okay. So you have this sort of elite club. Any fancy dinners you all host together? There's like 5 of you. You're like, where should we go? McDonald's.
I don't do recognition.
Yeah, fair. Okay. So take us through the future. What are you actually planning to do? I mean, is this like, do you think it's the rest of your life? Do you have a plan? Like when for example, you go in to pitch someone like Sun, is it like, what do you say?
This is my life. I mean, this is what I do. This is what I'm focused on. This is what I'm focused on building. I mean, if you really step back and you think about the mission, right? If a lot of these businesses that we lend to, right? So these are proven businesses. They're not startups. They want to get debt funding to grow. By not providing them the adequate funding, they just don't have the chance to become the corporates of the future, right? So you end up in this world where you're just dominated by the existing large businesses that exist, and they just get multi-brand and they dominate every part of your life. And actually, I think that's a pretty miserable life, right? So for us, actually supporting those small businesses and medium-sized businesses, giving them the funding that they need to actually grow is a phenomenal mission. And also, those are the businesses which tend to drive employment growth and productivity growth in any economy, right? So they tend to be sort of the lifelines and sort of the heart, if I can put it that way, of an economy. So for us, it's supporting those businesses across major markets across the globe. So for me, that's a pretty large endeavor.
It is. It's awesome. I mean, as an entrepreneur who's been in that position in my last business, where the only real opportunity, to be honest, was venture capital, wish this was around, and I love it. Okay. Coming towards the end, because you're a busy man, you've got credit committees to go to and all sorts. We don't hear that from everyone all the time, but it's a niche excuse, so I'm going to let you off and believe you this time. What is a normal day or routine for someone like you? What time do you get up?
5:45.
And what do you do?
Work out and do yoga.
Okay.
And meditation.
Yeah, at home?
Yeah.
Cool. How long have you been doing that for?
Working out forever. Yoga and meditation for probably the last 18 months or so.
You only just realised you have Indian heritage in the last 18 months. Got it. Okay.
I just realised I need some balance.
Yeah, exactly. So suddenly...
That's why standing on your head upside down is a good thing to do in the morning.
to be fair, I just started yoga as well. I'm loving it. It's awesome.
Phenomenal.
Okay, so how are you actually able to relax or unwind, or are you just always relaxed and unwind?
I'm always relaxed.
Okay, well, let's take it the other way. Have you actually ever had like a hard day, like mentally, as in like considered that to be just like, what the fuck is going on? I'm so down. Basically, are you human? I think is the question. I just didn't want to answer it like that.
Do I have WTF days? Of course I have WTF days. I mean, every entrepreneur does, right?
What happens in your mind when that happens?
But do I end the day and say I'm down? No, because ultimately, I think I learned very early on, whilst I was building Copal, is that you just have ups and downs every single day as an entrepreneur. So you don't get high on the highs and you don't get low on the lows. Everything gets muted, right? Again, in the early years of building Copal, as I've said many a time, I used to bite my towel literally every morning, right?
Okay. We're getting some humanity here. There is a reaction. There's a physical reaction.
Get ready for this, right?
Good man.
I mean, get ready for the fight, because every day's a fight, right? But after years of doing that, it's sort of like you can have a really crappy day, right? And things go wrong. But you know what? It's sort of fine.
There's always tomorrow.
Yeah. And you know what? What you do is you put on your boxing gloves and you go for it.
And also you named your company with the word cope in it. I mean, you've got it all registered in advance. Okay, what's the biggest mistake you think you've ever made? Is there anything like reflecting, you're like, that there must be
As I said, I don't look backwards.
Yeah, so no mistakes, only lessons.
Look, I probably make 10 mistakes a day, right? The trick is to get more right than you get wrong. Right? And to keep on running forward. So,
fair play. What's the biggest lesson you ever learned?
What's the biggest lesson? Look, I mean, ultimately, you have to have high conviction. And if you believe in yourself and you have high conviction, you go for it. I mean, anything's achievable, right? As I say to my kids, nothing's impossible.
Yeah, I mean, these poor kids, I mean, they're already running 4 businesses each, obviously. Okay, take me through who's the most impressive entrepreneur that you've met, that you admire, that you've actually gleaned some insight from?
That's a hard one because, like I said,
I'm not here to ask easy questions, mate.
If you just take the plot of what we just discussed, right?
Yeah.
You've seen the characters that have sort of touched through the last couple of decades, and I would say I've taken portions from all of them. I wouldn't embody one individual as the individual which I've learned the most from or look up to the most. I think you can learn from all sorts of people, and I've had very strong mentors in my life as well, who've absolutely guided me and helped me through. And I continue to have that too today. So that's not an answer to your question, but that's the answer which I'm giving you.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to answer it. I was expecting you to give me the one you wanted. So we're on the same page here. Okay,
you know how this works.
I've
You've done this before.
I've learned quickly, right? Yeah, I'm a fast learner. Okay, other than the birth of your children, of course, highest point of your career or life?
Meeting my wife, of course.
Oh yeah, well then other than that.
I'd probably say the lowest was selling my previous business, by the way, right? Actually, when all the money had cleared, I was like, oh my word. This is like, I just didn't know. I felt the poorest I've ever felt in my life.
That's probably why you went back to it so quickly with Joel, right?
The highest, I don't know. Every day's a high. I mean, it's just like, as I say, mute.
I did ask you to stop smoking that joint
as
soon as you walked in. But, Okay, listen, we're going to finish up because I know you've got places to go. So what advice would you offer to any of our aspiring entrepreneurs listening today? What is the one thing you can leave them with?
Hunger. If you have enough hunger inside you, if you've got the fire in your stomach, you'll achieve anything, right? It's just like the ability to say there's only a plan A and you're just going to go for it. You can only have that if you've got something fundamentally inside you which is driving you towards that. And for me, it's hunger.
Awesome. So stay away from those Leon chains, guys, because you've got to stay hungry instead. Don't make it too easy for Rishi and OakNorth. Rishi, thank you so much for coming in, mate.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thanks.
How do some of the world's sharpest minds start their day? By putting their brain first. And it's not just our secret leaders who kick off every day with heights. From Stephen Fry to best-selling author and fellow podcaster Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who give us rave reviews. So if you care about your brain's health and cognitive potential, think heights. Listeners can get 25% off their first month with the code LEADERSHEIGHTS at www.yourheights.com. Next week on Secret Leaders.
Board would run around and come up with ideas for deals. Management would be like, we're trying to run a business, and every time these acquisitions took place, it's a year of integration. I mean, it's not just, oh, we bought LoveFilm. You have to then sit down for a year and combine the teams, combine the tech. These are massively distracting obligations on the team who are trying to make money for all of us. So a good board and investor won't be throwing ideas all the time, and will try and fend off a lot of stuff.
That was from our live event, Both Sides of the Table, where we got a unique insight into the behind-the-scenes story of how LoveFilm, which we now all know as Amazon Prime Video, sold to Amazon. But this isn't just a one-sided story. We get to hear from both the founder, William Reeve, and their board venture capitalist at the time, Simon Cook, who together help us unpack what this journey was like from both sides of the negotiating table. As always, what you'll hear with us, you won't hear anywhere else. So tune in, or you'll miss out. We hope you enjoyed this episode. It was brought to you by me, Dan Murray-Serter, producer Rich Martell, editor Harry Morton of Lower Street Media, and marketing by Hannah Russell of Mags Creative, and stunning visual design by our talented designer Christina Naru of smartupvisuals.com. You can check out show notes, transcripts, and our upcoming live events on our website secretleaders.com. If you've not yet, please hit subscribe. Leave us a review, tell a friend, take a screenshot of this episode and add it to an Insta story. I mean, you know what to do. And tag us at Secret Leaders or at Dan Murray-Serter, and we'll add you to our story in appreciation back. Rich and I put together Secret Leaders for free because we love our day jobs as entrepreneurs, but every time someone takes the time to share it, it means a lot to us. So don't forget, it's the little things like that that keep us coming back every week and every year into the studio. See you next week. See you next week. See you next week. See you next week. See you next week.